What's a species? The short answer is it's complicated. I'm Melanie Trecek-King, and I'm a biologist and a critical thinking educator. For the slightly longer answer, stay tuned. While it might seem straightforward, defining a species is actually quite difficult. For example, these birds are different species. These dogs are the same species. But why? Currently, there are over 26 species concepts, or ways to define a species, each of which has its strengths and weaknesses. Let's briefly talk about two of the most common. According to the Morphological Species Concept, a species is a group of organisms that share a unique set of physical traits. This concept is based on the assumption that organisms that look similar must be related. The pros: this is a quick and easy concept. But the cons: looks can be deceiving. Some species, like these butterflies, have significant physical variation, in this case, due to seasonal changes. And due to sexual selection, males and females of the same species, like this peacock and peahen, can look very different. Also, species can appear similar for reasons other than relatedness, such as adaptations to similar environments, like these sharks and dolphins, or when one species evolved to mimic the other. Okay, let's test this concept on these butterflies. How many different species are shown here? And which belong to the same species? These heliconius butterflies are an example of Mullerian mimicry, in which different species evolved to appear similar because of a mutual benefit. In this case, they all have chemicals that make them taste yucky to predators. And by appearing similar, predators don't have to sample them all to learn they're gross, I'm not going to eat one. Are you ready for the answer? These belong to the same species. These two are another species. And these two are another. The most commonly used species concept is the biological species concept, which defines a species as a group of organisms that can interbreed with each other in nature and produce viable, fertile offspring. The major part of this concept is that it emphasizes the role of reproductive isolation in the evolution of a new species. More on this in a second. But there are cons. It can't be used with extinct organisms, such as fossils, because we don't know how they mated, or those that reproduce asexually or without sex, like these bacteria that make yogurt. And there are situations in which different populations regularly hybridize or cross, such as these salamanders. This is what's known as a ring species, as it evolved around a geographic barrier, in this case, California's Central Valley. All of the populations can mate with their neighbors, except for the two at the bottom. These salamanders are therefore considered subspecies of the same species. Okay, let's explore this a bit further. What does reproductive isolation mean? It's about to get fun. One of my favorite things about biology is that it's all about sex. Take that, chemistry. Reproductive isolation refers to the barriers around different species that keep them from producing viable, fertile offspring. These barriers act like invisible walls, preventing the flow of genes between populations. Over time, the populations evolve independently, accumulating unique traits until they're distinct species. These barriers are known as reproductive isolating mechanisms. Prezygotic mechanisms prevent the sperm from fertilizing the egg and forming a zygote, while post-zygotic mechanisms prevent the hybrid offspring from developing or reproducing successfully. Let's dive into this a bit further. Prezygotic isolating mechanisms prevent sperm from fertilizing an egg. One example is geographical isolation, in which species live in different regions or habitats, so they rarely encounter each other. For example, polar bears live in the Arctic, while spectacled bears live in South America. They're never going to meet, so they can't mate. Then there's temporal isolation, where species reproduce at different times of the year, season, or even day. Think about flowers that bloom at different times of the year. They might be right next to each other, but they can't cross-pollinate if they're not flowering at the same time. Behavioral isolation is my favorite isolating mechanism. Yes, I'm a nerd. Some animals have elaborate mating dances or rituals. Usually it's males trying to court a female. But if a male doesn't do the right dance, the female won't think it's sexy and they won't get it on. Let's take a brief moment to appreciate the effort these little guys are putting into shaking their tail feathers.
I've been really trying, baby, trying to hold back this feeling for so long.
Well done, guys. Mechanical isolation refers to the differences in reproductive organs that prevent mating. A fun example is the lock and key genitals found in many insects. Only the right key can open the lock, preventing sex between individuals of closely related species. The final prezygotic barrier is gametic isolation, where sperm are incompatible with the eggs of a different species. This is common in organisms with external fertilization, such as aquatic animals like fish, amphibians, and invertebrates, and even wind-pollinated plants, where gametes are released into the environment. Even if gametes from different species meet, they won't be able to form a zygote. But what if a zygote actually forms? Well, that's where post-zygotic barriers come into play. Hybrid inviability means the hybrid offspring either dies early in development or has a short lifespan due to health issues. For example, sheep and goats are closely related, but they have different numbers of chromosomes. If they do mate, it almost always results in miscarriages or stillbirths. This geep in northern Germany is one of only a handful of documented goat-sheep hybrids ever found. And then there's hybrid sterility. These hybrids survive, but they can't reproduce. A classic example is the mule, a cross between a horse and a donkey. Mules are strong and hardworking, but they can't have babies of their own. As you could probably guess, post-zygotic isolation is more common between closely related species because they're more genetically similar. But post-zygotic barriers are a waste of reproductive effort. If two individuals from different species mate and produce offspring, but those offspring are inviable or sterile, then the parents expended energy and resources without producing viable offspring. So post-zygotic barriers tend to be selected against. Consider the hybrids of lions and tigers. These big cats rarely come into contact with each other in the wild, but they're related enough to form hybrids in captivity. However, ligers and tigons are usually infertile. Plus, due to a variety of health complications like skeletal problems, organ failure, and susceptibility to certain diseases, they don't live as long as their parents. Therefore, according to the biological species concept, lions and tigers are reproductively isolated and are considered separate species. Species are a human attempt to categorize Earth's vast diversity of life. But evolution is dynamic, and at any given moment, populations might be in the process of diverging into new species, making it difficult to definitively classify them. So what is a species? Like I said, it's complicated. And also, isn't biology awesome? Thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe.